Hello, old sport. Absolutely old sport. What about it, old sport?
Morning.
Old sport.
Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Morning Old Sport. My name is Jake, or as he knows me, Mr. Elif. His name is Logan, or as I know him, the kid who's in my class and has been for the past 4 years. And this is a podcast where a teacher and student have a candid conversation over a cup of coffee every week. Logan, what's up? How's it going?
It's going pretty good. Woke up this morning, blue skies. Good morning.
It's good. I woke up and looked in my kitchen. I woke up and looked in my kitchen and saw a light shining through, like the sunlight was shining through the kitchen and the natural lighting.
Beautiful.
It was just like perfect. I don't know if that was a dream because I was taking melatonin last night. And so on melatonin, I'm like a little woozy when I wake up, so I don't know if that was real or not. But, we were talking about melatonin this morning because I told you I'd taken one before we started recording, and you were talking about these shadow people dreams that you had.
Yes.
I think that would be just like a perfect way to just like start this show this morning. So tell us about your shadow people dreams.
So whenever I take melatonin, number one, I always wake up at like 5:30. Every
Okay.
single time, never fails. I never sleep good all the way through the night. So if I ever take one, I'll be asleep and then I'll have a dream where just a shadowy figure come running in my room on all fours, kicks my door open, my door slings wide open, runs, and then runs straight into my closet. And at that point, now I'm like actually awake and I'm fully awake. And my dream feels like extremely real too. And now I'm fully awake and like in real life, I guess. And my door's closed, my closet's open, but my closet's always open. So, and for some reason I always associate with my sister, the one person I was crawling. I'm like, get out of my room, like I got school in the morning. And then after about 10 seconds of me saying that, I realized like, oh, she's in college.
She doesn't even live here.
Yeah. It's
Like when you see it, is it like, because I heard this theory one time about dreams that they mean different things when they're from like different perspectives. When you dream, do you dream from like a first person point
Yes.
of view where it's like from your eyeballs, or do you like see yourself, or is it like a
No,
combination?
it's always first person. The shadow people dreams are always first person.
See, like mine are like movies. I dream like a movie. Like
you can see yourself in.
I'll see like different angles.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it'll be first person, sometimes it'll be like me and the other people in the dream. So like that's so weird to me. All that being said, we're not here to talk about dreams today. We're here to talk about a book that you and I have both read and how it's impacted our lives, because each week we're going to pick a different topic and kind of just like dive into it. And so I think this week is technically your week to pick the topic, and you picked the book that we've read, which is
Looking for Alaska.
So we both read Looking for Alaska. I read it about 9 months ago, and then we had something very similar to what happened in the book happen here at our school. And so Logan's in a lot of my classes, and I was like, dude, you need to read this book. I really feel like it would help you and a lot of the other like students who are going through this loss of losing one of our students and our friends. And so I was like, you need to read it. And so you finished it how long ago?
About a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
So you just finished it. It's a little fuzzy on my brain. But I think we're just going to like dive into like some of the things that really stuck out to us, and hopefully it builds a bigger conversation about what was going on. One of the big things that you wanted to talk about was the Great Perhaps, which I think is really cool. Mm-hmm. So tell us about the Great Perhaps, what it means to you, like what it was in the book, and then how like we'll just kind of dive in from there.
So I think it's about like just taking that risk that can just change your life completely, like diving into something, into the unknown, not really knowing what's going to happen, and just taking that risk that can change your life. Like Miles, when he went to the boarding school, he was just really didn't have a life in Florida in his old school. He stayed to himself, just read people's last words, but he took that risk and went to this boarding school, and his life completely changed. He met Alaska, and that completely changed his life, just taking that risk.
And for you, like, why was that so impactful? Like, was the idea of it, do you think it's because like you're in this like very important stage of your life and you feel like you're on like the brink of a great perhaps, or like do you feel like those moments have happened to you yet?
I feel like the main thing that stands out to me the most is that you don't always know when that great perhaps is about to happen to you.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was thinking about it, is I feel like the biggest moments in our lives, like
You have no clue.
sometimes, like for the most part, you have no clue. Like there's obviously like super important things like somebody dying or, you know, like for me, like my kids being born or getting married. Like obviously those moments are like boom, great perhaps moments, huge turning points in my life that you can like remember
Yeah.
the date and stuff like that. But I think what the book that I liked about it so much is that, you know, it documents it in a day by day basis, and that great perhaps, like he's writing it as though it's happening each and every day,
Yeah.
and he doesn't realize in the moment that his great perhaps is happening.
Yeah.
And I can't remember at the end of the book, does he ever even like recognize that he had that
Yeah,
moment?
no, that's where I got the thing from where he was like, I sat, he was talking about the labyrinth of life, the maze of life.
Okay.
And how he just sat in his own corner of the maze when he was in Florida. He just sat in his own corner of the maze and made his own life with people's last words and not really having any friends.
Yeah.
And then he took the risk, the great perhaps, and he was like, it completely altered the course of my life, just taking that risk.
Dude, that's so, like the way he writes that is so good because he's talking
Yeah.
about like
The last, like, or part of it, I guess.
yeah, because now I'm thinking about what you just said and how that like applies to like any situation, and I didn't realize how important that was when I read it. But now I'm saying like, so many times people, if we're using this as a metaphor for life, like everybody just like stays in their corner of the maze, which is like a metaphor for the world that we live in, and like they're afraid to take the risk because they're afraid they're going to get lost or
Yeah.
fail or something like that. And like, I feel like even though the book and our lives are filled with so much just like suffering and pain, like the idea of like taking the risk is the joy that you find in it of like, why don't you just try it? And I love it. We looked at that quote yesterday. We were talking about it when I think he says something like in the book, like when adults tell teenagers that they're invincible, they don't know how right they are because like, and then that gets into like a whole conversation
whole
of like
other-
energy and like, can you actually be gone forever and like really big concepts that I don't know if I can tackle. But I think it is important to realize that like if you just try something, you might get lost along the way, but ultimately
That's the beauty in it.
yeah, and like I don't know, the metaphor of the labyrinth is really cool too because
Yeah.
it's like
It can relate to like so many different things.
yeah,
Like
it could mean
life
like
in general. Like,
Yep.
I mean, life is really just amazing in itself because you don't really know where you're going. You just have to live in the moment.
it could be life, it could be like a certain situation in life, like it could be a problem you're trying to solve. It could be as big or as small
As you make it,
as
yeah.
you make it. And I think that was what was so cool about the book too is like I don't know if he knew that he was writing a masterpiece, but I think it's amazing of how like how broad and yet how specific his writing was.
John
And-
Green?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
how much it like hit me. And so another thing that stood out to me about the book was the whole last paragraph,
Yeah.
or the whole like last thing where he's writing the letter.
Last 2 or 3 pages.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. You and I talked about it. Of like you can dive into that and read that in so many different ways. But dude, that quote that he has, the Thomas Edison quote,
Yeah.
where it's like he's talking about losing somebody, and he says, you know, Thomas Edison's last words were, what? It's like I don't know. I know you're somewhere, and wherever it is, I hope it's
Yeah.
beautiful. And I'm like butchering the quote, but like, whew, like it's so good to just like. Grief is such a hard thing to tackle,
Yeah.
and like you guys having lost a classmate is like one thing that I'm realizing as a teacher is like seeing so many different people affected by a tragedy in a way that is so like universal but so unique, kind of like the book, you know, like y'all are all navigating your grief in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And I think that it's being a kid. I mean, just talk about that for a second, and you don't have to go into specifics or anything, but just like, what is it like right now in the moment being a teenager who's gone through something that's kind of like traumatic or full of grief?
It almost brings us closer as a class, and like just everybody kind of bonds together and is always there for everybody. 'Cause I mean, I've never been closer with some of the people that I've been closer with now.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, you just care for them so much deeper because you realize like we're not going to be on this earth in this body with our relationships and with our life forever. So you need to cherish that, and it's made me closer with everybody, and it's also made me like really appreciate living in the moment. Because I mean, I used to just not necessarily go through the motions, but I didn't appreciate the small things.
Yeah.
And I didn't like appreciate my friends and my family as much as I really should have.
Yeah.
And just after this, it's just kind of the way I've changed the way I view life. Like I appreciate the mornings, my family, my friends. Like I just cherish everything like 1,000 times more than I used to.
And I think that's like, I don't know, when something like this happens, I think it makes you grow up. Mm-hmm. Like your great perhaps moments, right? Mm-hmm. When those great perhaps, and here's a weird thought. Like when you recognize the great perhaps moments happening, mm-hmm. and you feel like you've taken that next step around the labyrinth and you've made that corner and you see a big wide open space, mm-hmm. if we're going metaphorical here, for whatever it is, like for me, like I haven't ever had anything super tragic happen in my life, and I know that it's going to happen sometime. But like I can think about like marriage or like my kids being born. When those moments happen, I think it like forces you to grow up mm-hmm. a little bit, and for y'all as like 17 and 18-year-old kids, like that's hard because you're not used to that, right? Mm-hmm. As for like me, as like I was 20 something when I was married and I was 20 something when I had kids, like I was kind of an adult by that point, so I was ready for it. But man, I think it's so interesting that you guys have had to learn to grow up mm-hmm. in that way, and I hate that for y'all. But I think that you guys' perspective, not just you, but the other students that we talk to normally, like it sucks and it's really, really hard to go through something tragic. It sucks to go through something tragic, and I would not wish it upon anybody. But the things that you guys are saying in the moment, you may not realize it, but it is pushing you forward in your own labyrinth mm-hmm. and like pushing you forward in your life's journey. And it's like you said, man, like that's such a good lesson to remember, to like not taking for granted the like little bitty small things.
Everything in life.
And like, that's something that I've tried to be better about, and it's hasn't even been until like the last year or so that I've tried to be better about it. I don't know, we live in a world where you can document everything, mm-hmm. and I'm trying to be better about documenting things, but then like there's this whole reality of like, oh, when you're documenting something, are you actually living in the moment? And then it's like, I don't know, that's like a labyrinth for me that mm-hmm. I'm in right now of like, how do you navigate being in the moment? So like, let's get practical with it. Like, what are the things that you're doing to take in the moment more, and how are you practically doing that, and what can you teach me of how I can be more present?
I mean, I used to have my phone on me at all times, and I used to always be on my phone. I've gotten a lot better about keeping that away from me, and just being outside also is like a humongous thing. Like nature and life is so beautiful. Like life is unfair, but nature itself is beautiful, and even the unfairness of life and the aspect is beautiful.
Dude, that's so good. Like the fact that flowers grow up from the ground and mm-hmm. that the sun comes up every morning, and like being outside, so like where's like your place that you go, or what do you do to be outside that like really like brings you to life?
So I like to hunt a lot. Okay. So I mean, you spend 3 hours in the woods there, and I mean you literally watch the sunset go down, or if you hunt in the mornings you see the sunrise. That's really beautiful. That always like touches me all like every single time. And
it's like in the woods?
Yeah.
Okay.
Also just like going on walks with my dogs, like just behind my house, like doesn't have to be anywhere particular.
Yeah.
And when when it's not 35 degrees, I'd also like to go camping.
Yes.
Not 35 degrees.
Are you like a go out by yourself kind of camper? Or are you like when you're in nature, do you like being alone?
Yes, I like being by myself and my thoughts and everything.
Yeah. That's good. And like I think for me, like nature is so just like, I don't know, this sounds like woo-woo, but like it's healing to be outside mm-hmm. and to just like I said, just like be alone with your thoughts. Because I think when you have all these other outside forces, mm-hmm. even if they're coming from like a cell phone or like a, social media or whatever, like, I don't know, like when you're by yourself out there in nature, you're forced to literally just be alone with your thoughts and the world. Mm-hmm. And that's all that you have. And like, I don't know, has that process, like with all this stuff that's happened in the past year in your life and stuff like that, like has that helped you in any way to be outside? Or
Yeah,
like,
because it takes away all the distractions. Like you're literally left there with nothing but you and your thoughts. Like it takes away every single thing that could impact your thought process.
yeah.
It's just you.
And I feel like, and I'm not speaking into your situation specifically, but for me, like, that process hurts at first, and it's like really, really painful to go through because it does take some work to like be alone with your thoughts and like actually confront them and be like, okay, this is how I feel and this is what's going on. But to go back to our example, like that is the way to take the next step through the labyrinth, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because like you can either, it goes back to what we said earlier, like you can either sit in the corner and like neglect everything that's happened.
Make your own reality.
Right.
Like just nothing ever happened yet.
And just like sit there and exist and push away the bad feelings, push away this, push away that. Or you can address what's going on, even if it means like doing something that's like totally countercultural, like I'm gonna go outside and be by myself for 30 minutes and I'm not gonna take my phone and I'm literally gonna like.
Which it sounds like a crazy idea, but in reality is not, and it's been a thing for the past millions of years.
Yeah.
And it's just,
it's so new to us though that we're having to like, isn't it weird that we have to like retrain our brains to think about things the way that we have always thought about them for thousands and thousands of years?
just because of something that's been around for 30 years that has impacted our lives so much.
Yeah. So we like, to recap, we got the labyrinth, we talked about the great perhaps, we talked about last
Nature.
quotes, nature, and our advice to people today is to go outside and
Just talk to yourself, be honest with yourself.
talk to yourself.
I know that sounds crazy.
In your head, like if you like journal, write it down, talk to yourself.
I mean, if you need to talk to a pine tree, to talk to yourself.
Exactly.
And have it.
I mean, I just read a book. That may be the next reading you get of this guy. It's called Siddhartha, and he goes to this river, and he meets this old man, and the old man's like, he's asking the old man for advice, and he's like, what advice do you have me? And the old man's like, I don't have anything to tell you. Just listen to the river, and the river will tell you everything you need to know. And I think, like,
puts thoughts in your head.
Like, I really do think that nature talks to you in ways
No,
that.
it does, 100%.
So now that we've gone on our melatonin rants of the day, I think this is a good place to stop for the first episode. Just candid conversation. How do you feel like it went, Logan?
I feel like it went pretty good. Talked about a lot. Got a lot of stuff off my chest.
It's like therapy, weekly therapy. And now I'm hyped up on coffee because I've been sipping it. So that's gonna do it for this episode of Morning Old Sport. Be sure to smash that like button or smash your phone and go outside. Whatever you want to do. Okay, we'll see you next week. I'm Mr. Elif. This is Logan. Peace out.